Hello, welcome to episode 19 of the Paper Crane Yarns Knitting Podcast. My name is Ashley and I am the dyer and yarn store owner of Paper Crane Yarns. I am coming to you from my yarn store located in central Alabama, again called Paper Crane Yarns. Normally I'd be sitting in front of my hand-dyed yarn wall, but I decided to mix it up a little bit today. So yeah, it's been about a month since I recorded, and I am glad to stop in this morning to do a little episode. I have quite a bit that I have finished or adventures I've been on and whatnot, so let's go ahead and just jump into it. So I will get started with my finished objects over the past couple of weeks, one of which I am currently wearing. This is my, my Reagan by Isabell Kraemer. I'll stand up and show you. So this is a cardigan, obviously, and I cannot say enough good things about this. So to talk about the yarn I used a little bit, I feel kind of rusty. I haven't done this in a while. I feel like I'm jumping around. Please forgive me. But this is the yarn that I used. This is Purl Soho's Linen Quill, and I purchased 3 skeins for this project. I clearly didn't need much of the third, so if you want to do this project and you are knitting the size small, you could get away with just 2 cakes or 2 skeins of yarn if you maybe just shorten the lace pattern, like the body, a little bit. Maybe if you do 1 less repeat, you'll have plenty, or you could do shorter sleeves or what have you. But if you have 2 skeins of Purl Soho linen quill sitting around, like maybe you did one of the half and half triangle wraps, or you were going to and you changed your mind and you just happen to have that in stash. I know that's a really popular yarn, and chances are you might have a skein or 2 floating around. I recommend this cardigan for sure. It is stunning. I really love it quite a lot. The fiber content is, I believe, 50% Highland wool and some composition of alpaca and linen. Try to show you up close. Hopefully it focuses. But yeah, so the shape of this cardigan is really beautiful. You can kind of see that it comes to a point here, and it drapes pretty low. And this has been fully blocked and everything, so it got a lot of length when I blocked it in the lace. That really opened up. And then the top portion is just stockinette. So yes, I really love this sweater. The construction was interesting. So the construction was really cool and kind of intimidating at first because, you know, I saw the pattern and knew I wanted to make it, knew I wanted the yarn. I think the yarn was on sale at the time that it caught my interest, so I just sort of jumped on it. And so yes, you just knit first the back portion, which is a rectangle of stockinette. Knitting and purling, you're doing this flat, and you do a provisional cast on when you start, because at the ends of each side of the rectangle are where your sleeves go. So when you get to the desired width of your rectangle, you knit one of the sleeves, and then afterward you pick up your provisional cast on and you knit the other sleeve. And I actually really enjoyed that quite a lot. That was my first time really doing a provisional cast on, and I totally understand now why you would. I have these seamless sleeves, and they're just, it's such a difference than if I had done like a long tail cast on and then picked up stitches for the sleeve. I feel like this makes it look so much more finished and polished. So that was really great. So then at that point, you would go along the bottom of the stockinette and around the front of it. You pick up your stitches for your lace pattern for the body. And this was a I think it was a 12 row repeat for this lace. And then at the end, you do your ribbing and you pick up for a little bit of an extra edge here to make it, to just kind of finish it off a little bit around the body. So yeah, that pretty much sums up my my Reagan, again by Isabell Kraemer. I used whatever needles were called for in the pattern. I did not do a gauge swatch. If you're new around here, I really don't ever do gauge swatches, and I haven't checked it since knitting and blocking it to know how close I got, but it fits perfectly, so I don't really care. Yep, again, I totally recommend knitting this. It's so stunning, and I want to knit a second one, especially now that I understand the construction behind it, which I think more than knitting it, determining how to follow the pattern was the only, I would say that is the hardest part, and that wasn't even difficult. So once you get past that little hump, then you could easily knit this pattern. In fact, I actually started this, and at some point during the lace, I don't take notes like I should when I'm knitting lace, and I didn't mark where I was within the pattern repeat. I put this away for a couple of weeks and then pulled it back out, and so I had to read my previous rows to figure out where I was in the repeat, and even that was not too bad. So this is a very simple pattern in my opinion, and I think there may be some kind of knit along coming up with Isabell Kraemer patterns, so this might be a good time for you to try out this one if you've had your eye on it. But moving on, I do have another finished knitting object, and I just finished it yesterday morning, so I still need to weave in the couple of little ends that I have as well as block it, but I definitely had to show it today. This is my Calville shawl by Gabriella of the Merryweather Knitting Podcast, and you can find her on YouTube, of course, and Instagram. I will have her linked below with everything else in case you somehow are not familiar, but you know what, I should change my camera settings so we can see this better. Okay, I made a little adjustment just so you could see this better and it will focus some. So yes, this is knit out of the Juniper Moon Farm Harriet, which is a 100% baby alpaca yarn, and this is the colorway Orange Heather, which I think is 1015. So I'm excited to block it and to open everything out a little bit, but this was the finished edge, this gorgeous moss stitch border, and then this section is what she's calling the flower bud pathway, I believe. And you can definitely see, maybe not so well in the sliding, but these yarn over sections that look like flowers. Once I block it again, I think they will open up better, but you can kind of see that there. We've got these Vickle braids separating the sections, and then you have this large lattice portion that looks like a basket or the top of a pie. And this is where you cast on up here. So you start with this moss stitch section, and it looks like a cobblestone pathway, and then there's this spine that the lighting really isn't doing this justice, but this textured spine that runs down the center of the shawl. So here you can see just how beautiful it is. Again, I can't wait to truly finish it and get everything done, all the ends woven in. I think I've talked about this project at length in my past video or two, but I absolutely love Gabriella's creative vision and her design vision behind this shawl pattern. Definitely go watch her video about her Calville shawl to learn more about her inspiration and to see hers. Like, hers is absolutely gorgeous. I used the same yarn that she used in a different colorway, so make sure you go look at that if you haven't already. But this is so warm and fuzzy. I love the alpaca. The yarn and this pattern were totally made for each other. I'm really happy that I went with this yarn that she used and didn't substitute it for something else, because this is a perfect project. Really, really beautiful. And it's quite warm in here at the moment, so it will be difficult to perhaps put this on, but I can't wait until the fall. I think this will be a perfect accessory. Would probably look better not on top of my sweater, but so I've complimented Gabriella many times already, but Gabriella, if you're seeing this, you did such a stunning job. I can't wait to see what other patterns you release so that I may have the pleasure of knitting them in the future. And it was a perfectly written pattern too. I didn't find a single mistake, or there was nothing confusing about it. Everything was straightforward. She worded things exactly how I like in a pattern, where, you know, sometimes you'll see something like, do this repeat this many times total, instead of saying, here's the pattern or the chart or what have you, knit it, and then do this 3 times. And it doesn't say if it's total or if it's 3 times additional. And so I always appreciate that little extra information, I guess. It's very helpful for me. And so she writes patterns in the way that I want to read them. So again, beautiful job, Gabriella. So my next 2 finished objects are quilts, and they are both for my daughter who is due in July. So I have, again, I've got 2 to show you. The first one being another everyday stripey quilt, I think is what this one is called. I found this pattern in a tutorial on YouTube when I made my last quilt, which was my first ever quilt. It's very simple to follow, and it really teaches you the foundations of quilting. So I really loved doing this one, and I made a second one. So it's just a very delicate, sort of girly, nursery, crib-sized quilt. So it is comprised, I believe, of the 7 alternating stripes of your main fabric. So this is mine, this white with these little gems and stars. And so then all of the other stripes are sort of contrasting. This one's, I'm showing you upside down, but some pastel rainbows, more rainbows. And I used this fabric in my first quilt, so if you saw that one, you may recognize this one. And let's see, more moons and stars. I also used this one in my first quilt. I should probably flip it the right way. And then the back of it is one solid panel of, once again, moons and stars and clouds. And the binding is this lovely light mauve with some white flowers. So there it is. The batting I'll come back. The batting I used was 100% cotton. That's what I've done for all of my quilts so far, and I really like the way that it is quite warm and but lightweight at the same time. I've really fallen in love with quilting. I have a lot of quilt plans. Not a lot of time to quilt right now, or resources, or physical stamina to do so, but I definitely have some plans. I would love to knit a quilt, I'm sure I've said that multiple times at this point. I would love to sew a quilt that had gnomes as maybe the motif, but using all pink fabrics and fabrics that have strawberries on them. I really, really love gnomes, and I love strawberries, so I thought that a strawberry gnome quilt would be just really cool, and so I'm planning on designing that at some point in the future when life allows for it. So there's that quilt, but then the much more exciting quilt. One moment. This quilt, I will definitely need to get some secondary footage of it to show you the quilt in all of its stunning, beautiful glory. This is a throw size quilt, so it's a much bigger one than the one I just showed you. I was sharing this on my Instagram while I was making it, and so perhaps you've seen it, but I haven't shown it finished yet. So here we go. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the design looks like. I used a jelly roll of these pastel rainbow strips from Connecting Threads. Oh, and this is the Adventureland quilt by Suzy Quilts. She released this pattern this year, and she said that it was a beginner-friendly pattern, and it totally was, so I'm glad that I decided to go with it. Actually, when I saw the pattern, I didn't even debate if I was going to sew it or not. I bought the materials right away, and then I held on to them until I had the time. But I just really adore this whole quilt. It's so beautiful. I wish that it was for me, but it's realistically for my daughter when she's old enough. I might hang it on her wall for now, or use it on my bed. I haven't decided, but ultimately it's going to be for her when she's older. But the colors I just really love. I like this repeat of the colors. There's two sections, of course, for the quilt blocks. There's these ones with the pinks and oranges, and then there's these blues and greens, which I also love, but I do love the other one better. And then this is my back panel here, sort of peachy neon roses. I purchased this fabric online and didn't get to see it in person before I purchased it, and I may have gone with a different fabric had I selected it in person, but I bought something like 4 yards of it, so I wasn't going to not use it. I think it's all right. It's not my favorite. I mean, it's beautiful. With this particular quilt, I don't know if it's my favorite in terms of design, but it works, so it's okay. I did quilt this whole thing myself. I thought about sending this to a long armor, but I'm trying to reel in a little bit of craft spending for now because of the fact that I have to buy things for my baby. So I ultimately decided to do it myself. And what I ended up doing was many, I believe these are about a quarter-inch quilt lines here in all of the white triangle sections, and then along the rainbow stripes I did a quilting stitch on either side of where the colors join, so you can definitely see or perhaps the light will blow it out, but there's a lot of texture here. You can see the difference in the texture in the triangle section and then in the stripe section. So yeah, that is my Adventureland quilt. Again, I'm really in love with this quilt so much. I would like to make another one, maybe with some scraps. This is a perfect pattern if you have a jelly roll. It's definitely designed with a jelly roll in mind, but you can also do, well, you can obviously pick whatever fabrics you like, but if you have lots of fabric that might be the correct width in your stash, then you could sew a scrappy one, and so that's my plan perhaps in the future. All in all, this quilt only took about 3 days worth of work, and that included all of the quilting. So the cutting, like making my big triangles, that part, piecing, putting all my quilt blocks together, the backing, the batting, and the quilting, and the binding. Again, it only took about 3 days, so if you're determined, this is a rather quick quilt project. So there it is. I'm very proud of this one. You might not be able to see with the lighting again, but these panels are white with very subtle white flowers. So I wanted to create a little bit of visual intrigue in the white space while not taking away from the stunning stripes. So I've mentioned this in a video a long time ago, I think. It's getting quite warm in here, so I had to take off my sweater. I tend to not do that because I do have tattoos, and I know that some people are perhaps a bit sensitive about that. So I tried to be mindful and keep them covered, but I'm sorry, it is far too hot in here to do that right now. So apologies, but I am now going to get into my works in progress now that I have shown you, I think, everything I have finished. I'm sure I've left something out, but yes, works in progress. So my first work in progress is using Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in the sweatshirt colorway. I purchased this, I think, last November, and my plan was to knit an all-over cabled pullover, but I decided against it for now because being pregnant with my first baby, I'm not sure exactly what postpartum will look like or the ways in which my body will or will not change. So before I knit anything that's going to be sort of relying on a particular body size, I thought I would put a pause on that and knit something else. So not too long ago, Alicia Plummer released a new pattern called The Getaway, and it is just a cardigan, and she calls for or uses Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in this pattern. So my size called for 9 skeins. I'm doing the second size, and I had 9 skeins, so I decided to just go ahead and make this my project. So I just decided to go ahead and make this my project, and I've already started. I'm really thoroughly enjoying knitting this one, definitely. And there are quite a few sizes. This ranges from a 36.25 bust circumference, and she's recommending 5 to 10 inches of positive ease, or 13 to 25 centimeters. And it goes to 87.75 inches. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sizes to choose from. That's pretty good in my opinion. Yeah, so that's up to 223 centimeters. So again, I think that's really great. I'm knitting the second size, which again calls for 9 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, and that is what I have. So I will show you my progress. I'm using one of my project bags that I sewed recently for the show that I did in Tennessee, and this one I kept for myself because the front panel I accidentally sewed it upside down. So it was a happy accident because I ended up with a bag in one of my favorite designs. Okay, so let's see. I was knitting on this. I did all of this in about a day. You know, Brooklyn Tweed Shelter knits up fairly quickly with it being a heavier weight wool, and if you're not familiar with it, it's 140 yards or 128 meters. It's a worsted weight. It's woolen spun 2-ply, and it is it's American Targhee Columbia wool. So it has a very nice, it's very lightweight and airy, and one of my favorite yarns to work with. It is pricey, but again, I got mine on sale back in November, and honestly, the way that this yarn holds up and really provides a lot of warmth and longevity, the price to me is worth it in that sense, because you knit long-lasting pieces with this yarn. So wholeheartedly recommend. A good alternative to this yarn is actually, I have discovered something that I personally carry in my store. In fact, I'm gonna grab some to show you. So here it is side by side with the yarn that I carry in my shop. And if you didn't see the labels, you probably wouldn't really be able to tell a difference. But this is Kraemer Soul wool. This is a German wool company. This is their Reborn wool recycled. This is actually very affordable, first of all. But second of all, it is 65% wool and 25% recycled acrylic and 10% recycled nylon. So the amazing thing about this company, if you haven't heard of them, they do a lot of recycled textiles in their yarns. So the story behind this blend is that they're sort of repurposing and reusing textiles that would have otherwise been thrown away in their fiber. So yes, it does contain a synthetic element, but it's a reused fiber from clothes that would otherwise end up in the trash. And the texture, while I will say this is softer, and of course these are not blocked or washed or anything like that, but this has a softer hand, but this is rather similar, and the gauge is quite close. I mean, you can almost see how nearly identical these two are. And I brought a couple of other colors to show some of the interesting variegation and speckle that you can get in this one. But like this one I really love quite a bit. There's another example of another shade, but we have a great shade range. So all that to say, yes, you could buy these at my shop. You can buy them online on papercraneyarns.com, or try to find maybe a local yarn store to you that carries these. If you are looking to do a project in Brooklyn Tweed Shelter and wanted an alternative for about half the price, that would be a great option. I've had a lot of wonderful feedback from customers in my shop who have tried this wool or this yarn and really loved the finished object. In fact, one of my favorite ladies who comes to my weekly knit night, she is gifting me a crocheted baby blanket, and I can't wait to show you guys because it's incredibly beautiful. But the yarn that she's using is this one in two different colors. Colors I didn't show, but it crochets and works up so stunningly. And just for like example, this is retails here at my store for $8.50 per skein, and I think Brooklyn Tweed Shelter is $16.75 or something like that. So anyway, I didn't go into this with the idea of it being like a sales pitch. I know I'm trying to talk about a pattern. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that whether you get that from here or elsewhere, it is a very similar substitution to Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in terms of the finished object that you will get. Of course, it's not going to be the exact same, and it's not 100% wool, and if those things are more important to you, then I totally get it. I mean, I love working with Shelter a lot, but I know sometimes accessibility is just as important as maybe those qualities, and the fact that they use these recycled textiles, I just love. I could talk about it all day, but I won't. They have lots of other yarns too that I would love to carry and don't currently, and some I do that also contain like recycled silk and just some other really cool recycled materials, like their cotton. I carry it. It's called Karma Cotton, and I believe it's 70% recycled cotton and 30% recycled plastic bottles. But the hand is wonderful. It's some of the softest cotton for the price. It retails for about $4. Some of the softest cotton that I have worked with. So, okay. Moving on, back to the cardigan. So here's where I'm at, and this cardigan, it will have pockets, which is exciting. You can probably see that in the picture at least. I mean, she's got her hands in them. And something I didn't realize when I purchased this pattern was that there is a lovely texture to the pockets and the back panel. So the sides of it are just stockinette. You can see there's quite a few stitch markers here. And all the patterns I've talked about today are paid for patterns, which is why I'm not going into extensive detail. But you'll see that there is a ribbing section here, and it's mirrored, so what's on the side is on the other. There's a ribbing section here where the cardigan will join or meet when you're wearing it. And then it goes into a stockinette section. And then you've got your pocket section here, and you can kind of even see it's already taking shape, and perhaps with this gray it's hard to see right now, but there is a textured pattern in there. Then you've got a tad more stockinette, and then you've got this whole back panel that features the same textured pattern. So I think this is going to be a really wonderful staple piece in my wardrobe with the color choice and the simplicity of the pattern, and just the fact that it's a long pocketed open cardigan. But again, as well, with the textured pattern, it's got some visual interest. So yes, really loving that cardigan. This has been, if you saw my Make 9 that I shared, I think on Instagram at the beginning of the year, unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. Those are all items that I intend to knit at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But again, as I've been saying, I feel like for months now, with the pregnancy and me being uncertain about fit and longevity of pieces, if I knit them now or if they'll fit after the fact, I'm just not doing the pullovers that I have had my heart set on for a while. So the cardigans have been a wonderful, cardigans and shawls, those have been my friends this year. My next work in progress comes from Star Wars Knitting the Galaxy, and again, I apologize if this is reverse. That's what it's called, Star Wars Knitting the Galaxy. And this is an anniversary present I'm making for my husband. He loves, we both love Star Wars. That's sort of how we kind of met and realized that we were meant for each other. Was our shared adoration for Star Wars, and his favorite character is Palpatine. So in this book, there is a pattern to knit this scarf that is called Chancellor Palpatine's scarf. And the idea is that this textured pattern is reminiscent of, you can kind of see here, the textiles for his wardrobe. So this is the pattern here. So I went ahead and got started on it, and let me tell you guys something. I didn't realize when I decided to knit this that it was knit long ways, and you're not building it up from, you know, theoretically casting on like 50 stitches and knitting that way. No, 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 of course not. This cast on was over 400 stitches, and you're knitting it from side to side. So it's rather intense, and I totally understand why it's like that because of the cabling. The cabling would not be achieved if it was knit the other way. So makes perfect sense, but it's a lot. So I have it in my Lila Styles Labyrinth project bag. I think this is the only project bag I have purchased from another maker. I usually make my own, so this one I very much love, and I thought this was a fitting project for this bag. I'll show you what I have. I'm just about done with the first cable repeat. So the yarn that I'm using it's Katia Concept Cotton Merino Tweed, and this is recycled cotton and merino, and this is the color 500. So it's 53% cotton, 29% virgin wool, and 22% polyester. The hand is really soft, and it reminds me of Drops Air a little bit, that blown yarn. I've used it to knit a novice sweater by Petite Knit. It's a little bit more dense than that one, but if you've used that, this is a similar, it has that blown sort of feeling, almost like a very, very delicate chainette. Perhaps it will focus. I will say so this is the yarn called for by the designer in the pattern, which is Tanis Gray, and I really wanted to use the colorway that she used because it was the same yarn, but it was I would say closer to a deep red and a black shaded yarn versus this one, which is a brighter red with yellow and orange sort of speckles and white, but you cannot find that one anywhere right now. I don't know if it's been discontinued, but I could only find it from somewhere. I got these from Canada. It was somewhere rather far from me. I would have paid triple the cost to bring in that colorway, so I'm obviously didn't do that. I couldn't find a dupe either that would have been a suitable color to mimic that one. So anyway, I just ended up going with this one. So the effect, I'm a little disappointed. It's not going to be quite as Palpatine as the other colorway would have been, but still quite a lot of fun. This is going to be really hard to show you, and there might be no point, because look at all of these stitch markers. Yes, and okay, I'm kind of a tangled mess here. Today's episode is really all over the place, so thank you for bearing with me. There's something about the combination of the summertime heat, and this room in my shop is at the front of the store, and I have all these big windows, which is great, except for the fact that it's very, very hot. And the air conditioning, even if it's running, does not circulate to this room very well. So yes, I'm kind of burning up here. Okay. So here you can sort of see where the cabling is taking shape. Again, I'm halfway through the cable pattern. So you do a total of, I think, 8 repeats of the cable section, and there are, I believe, 8 rows, or 12 rows, something like that, in the cable repeat. So yeah, I have quite a lot ahead of me. I actually had to buy a new cable for my Hiya needles. I had to buy a 60-inch cord. I think that the interchangeable set, the longest it comes with was a 40-inch. So that's not going to work. I thought I may try it, and I read other people's reviews on their time with the pattern, and they did say that the 40-inch was too short. And this amount of stitches is actually sort of bunched up on my 60-inch cable, so I'm really glad I didn't attempt that. This does call for a long tail cast on, and the 400 plus stitches, I only had to do my cast on twice, so I call that a victory. Normally I'm pretty spot on with guesstimating for a long tail cast on, but I have never guessed for 400 stitches before. And yes, I'm aware of different techniques you can use to get closer, and I did use those techniques, but all said and done, I was a little bit short. So I think I was able to cast on about 300 stitches the first time, and yeah, so I had to take all the stitches out and do it again. And the second time, thankfully, I got it. So I only had to cast on twice. I have stitch markers between every single repeat of the cable pattern just to stay on top of it, because it is actually rather involved. And I'm hoping maybe once the scarf is a little bit more established, maybe I can take out some of the stitch markers, perhaps have a stitch marker every 2 repeats, every 3 repeats, because I do think that the stitch markers are slowing me down a little bit. So yes, so not much to show you quite yet. Hopefully next time there will be a good bit. This was about a day's worth of work, and that's kind of disappointing because it's really not very substantial for that amount of time spent, but I know that in the end it'll be worth it and he will be appreciative, so whatever I can do is fine. I'm already on the second ball of yarn, so this certainly does eat up yarn. Okay, so I think the only other work in progress I'm going to show you is a quick one, and then I have a few things to show you that I purchased at Maryland Sheep and Wool, since I haven't recorded since I went. And at the end of the video, I'll have a little bit of footage from when I went to Maryland Sheep and Wool. So as if my baby doesn't have enough handmade blankets already, between the 3 quilts that I've finished, the crochet blanket I already finished, the crochet blanket that I'm being gifted from my friend Tammy from Knit Night, and my best friend Kira says she's crocheting one. Yes, as if that wasn't enough responsibility for handmade blankets, I am working on another one, and this one I started, I want to say, before I was even pregnant with her, but it was yarn that I had for another project that I ultimately ended up not doing because it was a crochet project. I am a knitter with a capital K, and that wasn't a K, that was just me. You know what I'm talking about. The letter K. I'm a knitter with a capital K. I'm a crocheter with a very lowercase c. I enjoy crochet, but it is not my expertise by any means. I'm very good at the basics of crochet and nothing else. So I ended up not doing the crochet pattern I originally planned this yarn for. So I'm doing a blanket instead. This is the Ziggy Blanket pattern by Hobbii. This yarn is from Hobbii. This is, I think, one of the Twister cakes is what it's called. It's been a couple years since I purchased it. I was originally doing this blanket in a pastel rainbow, and that was long before I was pregnant. But it was the idea being that it would be for my baby one day. These yarn cakes fall apart. They're these big, massive yarn cakes. The yarn is very fine, and it starts out really, really well. So I would say you get to about this point in the cake, which is the majority of the color changes, and then it all just goes to knots. And that's been my experience with every single cake I've used so far. So as stunning as the yarn is, and the gradient cake, I mean, it's got this beautiful marled effect. I am really disappointed by the fact that that happens. Like with the other pastel rainbow, it was so beautiful. It was neon, sort of, while being pastel. It was very bright and beautiful. And I got, again, it was rainbow. I started with the, I think I started with like the blue sides of things. So I was almost to like the reds. I think I was in the yellows. And I have not been able to untangle it, and I've been trying for over a year. So unfortunately, I've kind of run into the same problem with this one. At first, I didn't think that was going to be the case. I got through most of the colors without that happening. And now I'm right at the end, and I have been, the majority of my time that I've spent working on the blanket has actually not been crocheting. It has been trying to untangle the rest of the cake. So everything that was in this color, which is this deep blue with the light blue marl, was all tangled. So I've had to spend so much time just untangling it, putting it into a ball, and then I'm trying to do it like section, color by color, since it's all one long yarn. So I'm kind of removing each color from one another so that it kind of simplifies the total mess. So this is not connected to anything right now. I'm kind of just holding the stitch here. And I think this is a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook. It's a 3 millimeter crochet hook. So last night I spent a good bit of time untangling the final color, and I'm working backwards. So the really deep navy is a solid. I've gotten that one done, and now I'm working on the last color marl. It's like this deep blue with the navy. Once I finish untangling that and I get that into the ball, I will be able to finish this blanket, and I will be relieved, because I feel like this pattern is it has been an antagonist in my life since I've been trying to crochet it for a couple of years, and every time I do, the yarn is such a chaotic mess. So, but it's worth it. Again, this yarn is really pretty, and I do love, I believe it's 50% cotton and 50% acrylic for this one. So the hand is nice. It will be something washable that I can throw into the machine for the baby. And with this nice fine crochet texture, it'll give her some like tactile experience. And yes, like I highly recommend this project. And I wish I could say I recommend the yarn. They have a lot of beautiful colors. Maybe if you are just very slow, or you try to, I don't know, preemptively go through and cut out each section and roll them into individual balls, that might be a good alternative to this process. But yes. I actually have a second cake of this color. So I thought if I was feeling really ambitious, I might pick up, once this one's done, if I wanted to make this a larger blanket. Because at this point, what's interesting is I think this way, it's not going to work as a full-size baby blanket. It's going to be too short, because the rest of the color will only add maybe another couple of inches. But this way, it's much more reasonable. So this is going to end up being used this way, like the vertical stripes versus the horizontal stripes, which is what I believe the pattern intends for. So I'm not sure, but I might just pick up with the second cake and make it a lot longer. I haven't quite decided, but I also do have another yarn from them in a couple of solids that I could add around the edge as a border. So yes, I've got some plans for this. I'm ready to get this done. I'm going to persevere because I do enjoy it, and sometimes, you know, if you've just been knitting, it can be nice to swap up to crochet or vice versa, or whatever you prefer. So I am happy to have a simple crochet project. I've got other crochet projects on the hooks that are pattern repeats, and so I need to kind of reestablish where I'm at. This one's nice because it's a very simple pattern to memorize. So when I want something to do with my hands, but maybe not knit, which is rare, but it does happen, I can pick up that blanket and crochet. So yes, I wish the yarn wasn't giving me so many problems. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Maryland Sheep and Wool 2022, because I got to go this past May. At this point, it's been a month since I was there. So you might know that I went to Rhinebeck last October. My husband and I drove the whole way from Central Alabama to New York, and it was the most lovely time. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. So I was really looking forward to my first Maryland Sheep and Wool, and again we drove. This drive wasn't quite as long. It was still fairly long, but it was something like 12 hours one way rather than 16, which was New York. So it was a little bit less. I mean, 4 hours makes a big difference. The drive itself was a lot of fun. So Maryland Sheep and Wool, I'm sure you've already heard perhaps some other people talk about the weather that weekend, but it was unfortunately raining the whole time, and it was very cold. So it was cold and muddy, and you know, if I hadn't been already quite pregnant at the time, I think I would have withstood the intensity of it much better. But I really struggled to enjoy myself at Maryland Sheep and Wool. I mean, everywhere outside was completely muddy, and this part is totally my fault, but I did not pack according to the weather, because in Alabama and in Alabama it was that same weekend close to 90 degrees and sunny, and when I had checked the weather in the Baltimore area before we went up, I checked too early, and the weather report that I saw was completely different than what we actually encountered when I got up there. So again, I really did not pack accordingly, which is totally my fault. So I was pretty uncomfortable and fairly miserable the whole time. We only went for one day, and we only stayed for a couple of hours. It was a beautiful festival, and my favorite part was all the sheep. But I did struggle. That's not to say that, you know, I've had other people tell me that that is one of the very few times in all of Maryland Sheep and Wool history that it's been like that, and next year is their 50th anniversary. So they've been going for a long time, and I hear that most years it's not like that. So, you know, what can you do? It's not a big deal. Again, I still enjoyed myself. I just made myself miserable by not having something nice to wear that suited the weather. But it was a good time. I did run into some people that I knew or who knew me, and so that was really fun. And yes, I did not buy very much, but I wasn't expecting to. The whole idea behind going to Maryland Sheep and Wool was, I knew with my baby being due at the end of July, obviously I wouldn't be going to Rhinebeck, and I was kind of thinking it might be a while before I get to really go anywhere at all. So it was sort of like a last hurrah to be able to just get in a car and go somewhere with just me and my husband and just enjoy each other's company and our time together. You know, low stress, low stakes, that kind of thing. So overall, I'm so happy we did it, and we did have a really good time, other than the weather. So yes, very happy. I didn't go to buy a bunch of things like I did at Rhinebeck, but I am so happy with the couple of things that I did pick out, and so I will share those with you. So at Maryland Sheep and Wool, at the actual festival itself, I only purchased from one vendor, and that isn't because I didn't see a million things that I wanted, but again, just being reasonable budget-wise. But I did see this yarn company who I'd never heard of, and I knew there was no way that I could pass up a sweater quantity. So this is Yarn Hero Fiber Arts. This is their Stipple DK colorway, and they had this color, I'm sorry, not Stipple DK colorway, it's their line, the base. It's 75/25 merino wool and South American wool. This is a DK or light worsted. It's 215 yards to 84 to 92 grams is what it says. The colorway is movie theater, and it is absolutely stunning. I want all of their yarn now. I have been obsessively following their yarn and their updates and whatnot, because I would love to get more. I want to get all of the colors. I spent the most amount of time in this booth just deciding between the many beautiful colors. But what sold me on this one was they had a shop sample or a booth sample there, and it was the Love Note sweater by Tin Can Knits, which is an incredibly beautiful and popular pattern that I have yet to knit. But they had a sample knit in this exact colorway, and so I got to see how the yarn knit up, and I did take a video of that. I did not record much footage at all. I think I saw Nitty Natty there, and she had a camera the whole time, and I was impressed because I was, again, not wanting to deal with the rain. I felt like I was just bundling up, and yes, she's definitely the professional here. So I did get some footage, and I will show that later, and you can see what I mean with how stunning the sweater is and is going to be when I make my own. This will be, I think, the next thing that I knit after I finish my cardigan and the scarf, because I'm very excited. And with it being a positive ease sweater, I do know that it will fit me postpartum, and yes, I'm just gonna go with it. So I'm gonna knit the same size that they knit with the 4 skeins, and yeah, so you can see all of the beautiful it's yeah, just stunning. This hand-dyed marled yarn. This one is sort of like a navy blue with pink and yellow and green and light blue, and yeah, beautiful. The other thing that they do at their booth was they did mill ends. So as much as I wanted to buy an infinite amount of full skeins from them, I didn't, but they did get me with this because they had bins along the bottom of their booth that were full of mill end skeins. So these were all varying in color or weight, and they did this one by the ounce or the gram. They weigh it when you go to purchase it. And so I couldn't pass up this one. I'm going to use this for color work. This one is also the DK weight. This is something else that would have been beautiful to have a sweater quantity of. I don't know if this is actually a colorway that they do, or if this was just truly mill ends that they ended up spinning together. I'm not sure there, but you should definitely check out Yarn Hero. I'll have them linked below as well. And yes, get some of their gorgeous yarn. So the only other thing I purchased in Maryland was actually a spinning wheel. There's a neighborhood in Baltimore that's really a lot of fun. It's a lot of cute little shops and restaurants. We went over that way to get dinner and to visit an oddity shop, and we came across a yarn store called Lovely Yarns. It was a very cute little shop, and in the corner, and I don't have it here, I wouldn't be able to pick it up and show you anyway, but I'll put in some additional footage to show you the wheel that I got. They had a spinning wheel that was listed for, I think it was $100. I was, of course, skeptical. I've only used a drop spindle. I would really, really love to spin, and that's been a goal of mine. I've been wanting to just get like an Ashford wheel, or, you know, I've done lots of research trying to decide what wheel I would get. But I ended up getting this one because I asked them to talk me through it and tell me about it, why it was so inexpensive for a wheel, and just to kind of give me a little demonstration. It is an Ashford Scholar MK1. This was manufactured in probably the early 80s. It is no longer in production at all, and they don't even make the bobbins for it anymore. So that was the downside. It only came with the one bobbin, but they did tell me how I could get some additional bobbins, and I have since found even Etsy sellers who 3D print bobbins for this one. But there's also, they told me about Bobbin Boy, which is in one of the Carolinas, so kind of close to me, who could custom make like a wooden one for me. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do. But I decided to play with it right away, and I had some fiber that I actually got at Rhinebeck that I had been saving to use on a wheel. So I got started with it. It was very finicky getting started. It's definitely not as intuitive as like a modern wheel, which those, although I haven't used them, they make a lot more sense to me. And most of like the YouTube tutorials and whatnot you're going to find will be on something that has some of these more modern elements. This one was definitely much more basic. I had some issues with getting like the flyer to spin and whatnot, but eventually I got it working and it was going really well. I was spinning some stunning yarn, and suddenly the one bobbin that it came with actually broke. So I don't blame I definitely don't blame the yarn store for that. This thing is decades old, and you can tell that it has been well cared for, but there's only so much you can do with wood. I'm sure the tension, and it probably hadn't been used in a while, so when I went to use it, it was just brittle wherever the epoxy or the glue or what was holding the base of the bobbin to, I guess you could say, the stem. I'm still such a novice. I'm sure there's terms and I apologize. But anyway, the round part at the end of the bobbin, it just snapped off. Now, fortunately, it's something that I can epoxy and fix, and I'm sure it won't be perfect, but it'll work for me for now. So rather than, because I was so tempted after it broke to just bite the bullet and buy a brand new wheel. That's still in the works at some point. But instead of being impatient, I just figured, I bought this for training purposes. I will continue to use it. I'm going to just kind of refurbish it myself and get back to using it and enjoying it. So that's where I'm at with that. But I do have a wheel now, so that's exciting. And if push comes to shove, it'll just end up being a decoration on my shop, and hopefully that's not the case. But I do think I'll be able to fix it, and I'm planning on doing that maybe this weekend. It's been sitting for a couple of weeks. I was kind of mad at it. So yes, so that's everything I've been enjoying recently, or trying to enjoy. Okay, so June 11th, which is next weekend, is Worldwide Knit in Public Day, and there are a couple of groups in my area who are planning events. I am attending 2 of them, or going to try to squeeze 2 of them into my day, but I was invited to be a vendor at one of them, and it's taking place at the Hoover Public Library. And this is all in the Birmingham, Alabama area, so if you're in this area or want to travel for the day for some yarn fellowship, you should totally come out. The first one will be at the Albert Scott Library in Alabaster, which is a town in Alabama nearby my shop, and that will be a fun little group there. And then there will also be one with vendors, like a little mini festival, very, very mini, and that one will be at the Hoover Public Library June 11th, 11 a.m. Central is when we'll be getting started. So I'm vending there, and I decided to dye up something a little special that I am calling my library collection. And this is a set of minis. I have a few of them here. So yes, what a fun, bright handful of yarn. This is like a bouquet. So I thought I would just show these real quick and just talk through it a little bit because they were quite fun to dye. And I have full-size skeins also coming. Those are actually hanging up to dry right now, so I couldn't show them for the podcast. I thought I'd show the minis. And my plan is to just take all of the minis to the library as like a show feature. If I have any left over, I will put them online. I do intend on dyeing more of these in the future when I have more minis. I am out of my undyed minis now, so it'll be a little while, but again, if I have any leftovers, I will put them online. And the full-size skeins, I will also put those on my online shop. So to talk through my colorways, I chose 5 literary genres to represent with these colors. And they were dyed to work in tandem, or you could use them independently, of course, but I wanted to pick colors that would work as sort of a gradient, I mean a very colorful one, but things with elements from one another so that they could be used together if desired. So the yellow and peach and mustard little skein in the camera, the light might blow it out a bit, but this is poetry. And then it goes to romance, which has some olive green and peach and red elements with speckles. And then it goes to mystery, which is again some of those brown tones that are and olive tones that kind of share in romance. But then it's got blues and greens. And then it goes to, let's see, I put them out of order. But then it goes to fantasy, which is a sort of a aqua with lime green speckles and teal elements or turquoise elements rather. And then it goes to sci-fi, which is a very fun and vibrant lime green and yellow. And so yes, the library collection. So far for the full-size skeins, I've done romance and mystery because they're my two favorites. So I'm excited to share those. And I do have other full-size skeins and whatnot that I've been dyeing that I'm going to skip today because I'm kind of struggling right now. And this has already been long enough, but I figured I'd show you the project bags that I've been working on. So I have a new design with one of my favorite fabrics I've been trying to get my hands on for a long time now. It's an Alice in Wonderland fabric, and it has some gold metallic in the fabric. You can hopefully kind of see that. So I paired it with this linen that's purple with, again, gold metallic. So these are drawstring bags that I've been sewing up with a strawberry lining and pockets. And these are currently, I believe, not listed on the website, but they will be after June 11th, whatever I have left. So I'm just trying to make sure I have enough inventory for selling in person. And then again, I'll update the shop with whatever I have left. I did find, so this fabric has been out of stock, which is very sad because I had a lot of people who wanted this and I thought for sure I'd be able to make more after the fair that I vended at in April. I think that was the timeline. A lot of people wanted this fabric. I sold out of it pretty quickly, these bags, and I haven't been able to get the fabric since. I did find enough fabric in my studio to just sew a few more, so I have just a few more of these Luna Moth bags, again with the purple metallic and the strawberry lining. And then this one's fun. This one's not finished yet, but I figured I'd bring it out and show you. This one is using some Mandalorian fabric with the same metallic lining. So I'll have a few of these soon and lots of others as my pregnancy allows in terms of my stamina and my physical strength and ableness to my ability to sew. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yes, nice to be back in front of the camera, as dopey as I kind of feel today. Yeah. Okay. I'm putting this off. I've forgotten how to do this, how to say goodbye, how to stop recording. So thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment, let me know what you're working on, and yeah, thanks for stopping in. I hope to see some of you guys pretty soon. If you're traveling south to Florida for the beaches anytime this summer, you should stop by because my shop is right off of 65 South, which is what many of you would have to take to get to Florida. So if you'd like to stop in and say hello, then please do. I'd be happy to meet you. And if you're local and want to come to a knit night, we do those on Thursdays, so you're always welcome to that. Hopefully soon we'll be doing some Zoom knit night alternatives for those who don't live in the area. I would love to get some fellowship and community there from you guys and getting to actually hang out together one-on-one, real time. So yes, I've been talking about that for a while, and I'm finally going to make it a point to do that. Okay, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye. Here's the baby bump update. I am 32 weeks, I'm in my 8th month. She's getting pretty big. She's moving around like crazy. She's a very active baby for sure. On Monday, I actually am doing a 4D ultrasound, so I'll get to see her. I haven't seen her since the 20th week. So it's going to be amazing to see how much she's developed and grown, and yeah, she's a little gymnast in there. So I'm hoping we get to see some of that during the session. I just don't want you to stop. Maybe he's telling the other sheep.